Hello, everyone. Ryan Burton here. I have a guest, Ricardo Ruan.
Hey everybody.
Yeah, today, this is our first episode of Heart of Meditation, and we're gonna go over both of our journeys a little bit up to this point, and we'll also be giving our 2 cents on a quote from the Gita. So, this was a question that I thought earlier today, and I think it's pertinent to anyone who's listening because a lot of the people that are going to hear this, they've been practicing a variety of things, maybe for 10 years, at least five.
hmm
So we're both in our late 20s now. If you could actually go back in time to speak to your newly on the path self, what advice would you give him?
um. So if he's like starting out fresh, or
Yeah, just like imagine putting yourself back there and like all the things that you were thinking and all the energy that you had going and whatnot. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself back then?
practice practice more love and kindness. What happened was, at a certain point of me practicing for 8 hours a day, my mindfulness and concentration was so on point, but it became such a numbing effect of my emotions. I thought by doing regular shamatha practice, I can somehow love and kindness and happiness is just going to sprout out through shamatha. But the object wasn't doing that. It was it's sort of like the love and kindness is a different type of mechanism altogether.
Mm.
So I really wish that I had known that earlier, and I'm pretty sure I am 100%. I know for sure if I had these two together, oh, my meditation would be totally different.
Wow. And what do you think? Like as the years have gone on, woke up that loving kindness that you have now, that you see the value in now, and what led you to that now as opposed to not being able to see it and open yourself up to it before.
The first time that started awakening that was when I had met my teacher, Master John Douglas, and I asked him about my own personal issues with my heart. I had this I've always had this weird anxiety, and he told me he told me straight up, your parents didn't teach you how to love people. And so logically, I was like, I don't believe this. It didn't make sense. I'm like, of course they did. Then I felt this weird sensation in my heart, like if something like had cut my heart and things started spewing out. It was the weirdest thing. After that day, for the next 2 weeks, I cried like a little baby. Okay.
I remember.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah. It was the first time in a long time since I was a teenager where I started to really cry, and it's that seed started sprouting ever since then. Like, things externally started to happen, and internally, I started learning more about emotional intelligence later on, and people would start to talk to me in a more emotional manner. Um, Internally, I would continuously feel all these different types of emotions. So it was just a mixed bag of things, and now I feel absolutely amazing. I feel great that I can feel like a human, feel emotions, because there's really nothing one thing I realized was emotions are part of the path, and to accept them for what they are, because they'll pass. But it's not just a logical acceptance; it's a loving acceptance, and I think that's a difference that people need to understand. You can logically accept things. You can logically accept your trauma. You can talk about it, but do you really emotionally accept that, or do you accept the possibilities that you have sides of yourself that you may not enjoy? You know, and
Exactly.
that's one love and kindness practice that people probably don't do a lot.
Would you say that maybe even possibly at the beginning of your practice that you, or I mean, this applies to myself as well, but that we used our path, or that we use spirituality and Buddhism to even uh, make ourselves emotionally cut off.
Yeah, yeah. I can see where the term Praktyak Buddha can can be applied. So Praktyak Buddha does mean the stone Buddha,
Mm.
ones that just you live out in the forest and you don't feel nothing. Legit, I've never, I felt like I didn't care, but the transmutation process was very weird. It's like I didn't care out of not having emotion. Like I'm just like, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. Like something like I was very it cultivated selfishness. It
Mm-hmm.
really did. And I Buddhism there's I think if you're not taught correctly in terms of Buddhism, it can teach you and in meditation in general, but
Unhealthy disengagement.
yes,
Yeah,
like you'll start to disassociate in a weird way.
yeah. I feel like, yeah. I remember looking back, reading the Visuddhimagga, which is, Path of Purification, is a commentary of the Pali scriptures. It's a massive book, and the first section of the book is morality, sila. And I remember I never read that section. I was just like, who cares about this section? Take me to the concentration section
Right.
and let me read about the psychic powers, because that's where the real stuff is at. But now looking back, I see, oh man, like that sila, that ethical living, learning how to be honest, learning how to tell the truth, learning how to be truthful with yourself, learning how to, have your word and your deeds be in congruence. I mean, that's not explicitly stated in the text, but it's there that you, to really cultivate the samadhis and gain the wisdoms of the path, like you have to be a virtuous person. Totally overlooked that. 100% overlooked that. I was like, boring. Okay, let's get to the concentration part.
No,
And,
yeah, I get it because that's what I did too. You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
I saw that part and I was like, no, psychic ability sounds more fun than just practicing morals, because I feel like we project our own image to this because we feel like we're moral beings somehow.
Yeah,
Like it's just
right.
right. Like, oh yeah, I don't kill, I don't steal, I don't do sexual misconduct. Yeah, I'm perfect, so I can go past the sila part. You know,
Yeah,
and as a teenage or a young adult, that you I can see where that side of me got so applied to that projection of I'm being this kid that knows it all or thinks he knows it all
yeah,
in spirituality.
right.
And it was funny because I remember the first time I was a monk, I had told this guy who was practicing the chanting to become a monk. He was like, I asked him, "Oh, why are you here?" "Oh, I'm just trying to be a monk and just do the practice." And he asked me the same thing, like, "Why are you here?" I told him, "Oh, I'm trying to open my third eye." And he's like, "Oh, okay." Like I I I let go of those things. He told me that, and I got pissed off. I remember, like, what do you mean you let go of those things? Like, why those are important factors of your spiritual growth. Now I look back and I'm just like, man, it foreshadowing my life.
Oh man. Yeah, it's like, and not that I'm, I don't have a position against people who want to open their third eyes if they have a legitimate way of doing it, like, meditation on the blue pearl, or faith and sensory, MP3, whatever. But it it's like it's about where it comes from,
Mm.
the place that motivation and desire is coming from. I wanted to tell the listeners about, I know that John told you that you had spiritual greed.
Yeah.
And looking back, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Oh, I was so attached to. Well, first of all, I was attached to the idea of being like Buddha, and I think that's where I started cultivating. Like, oh, I needed to be the Buddha in every shape and way and form, and so I started forcing myself a lot of ways to do that because I thought that's what a person should be. And then knowing that the Buddha had these psychic abilities, or knowing that all these different masters had these abilities, it cultivated that even more. I was like, my life should be dedicated only to myself, only to cultivating these faculties.
Mm.
Whereas Sila was in the shitter, like it was just never there, right? It was just there. It was just like left. And so,
Never even considered that.
no.
Yeah.
And, I, for a long time, I had practice and practice and practice 8 hours a day trying to open up these different things. I've had nice experiences, but they're just nice experiences.
Right.
It's not an actual, awakening thing.
Yeah.
And when I look back, it's like, oh God, like, if only you had practiced love and kindness, because I know that the spiritual greed wouldn't have been there. Because why even pursue, like, there's a non-attachment in its true form in love and kindness,
Yeah, I think the loving kindness practices and taking that as a path, it really dissolves or allows that sense of self to be seen through.
Mm.
And I feel like if you're specifically chasing powers, or you're trying to cultivate certain occult faculties, if you're going, it depends on where it's coming from, right? But if it's coming from a place of ego, it's solidifying that sense of self.
Mm.
And the loving kindness practice allows that illusion to come undone.
Right. Well, also, I think you were saying this before, the intention behind it. Like, my intention was just pure greed or pure wanting to something so physical. It's a very physical thing to have psychic abilities. Whereas love and kindness and doing these other things in that nature,
it's more immaterial.
Yeah, there's no attachment behind it. It's compassion, it's love. And for the listeners, some people, I'm pretty sure, would be cringing at love and kindness even now, like examining themselves. The word love and kindness, I wouldn't be surprised if they're cringing, only because when we think of love and kindness, it's like people have misconstrued it in a way. It's like lovey dovey, or like I love everything. It's very hippy dippy in a way, and it sucks because real love and kindness isn't what has been shown to people. I think every person had a moment in their life where it's you've had an experience with something or someone where you just had that inkling or that little taste of it, of what true love and kindness is, where the ego drops and it's so unconditional and so compassionate. And I really find that one of the most important things now. Absolutely, absolutely. It's non-dual. It's I think, to me, that's the most non-dual thing you can do as a human. When they say unconditional love, what is that? It's non-dual.
Yeah.
You accept
without condition.
Yeah, you accept everything. It's beyond acceptance because you actually love it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is completely beyond acceptance. Acceptance is just you accept it. It's okay as it is. But loving something and having loving kindness, it's like that veil of disconnection, that veil of separateness is bridged. It just falls away.
Yeah.
With the arising of profound loving kindness.
Exactly. So even when thoughts come into your mind and you see them, first in practice you notice them, then you start to disassociate in a way where it's like, oh, this is my thought and they're right there. At a certain point, once you start to really practice love and kindness, those thoughts, you can actually, it's this weird, you connect with them.
Yeah, it's like imagine that the observer, quote unquote, in meditation, the consciousness faculty is like the ocean, right? And these thoughts are like the fish.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, in practice, we're seeing the ocean and the fish as two separate things. At some point, with the development of practice, whether it's through loving kindness or insight or whatever. That ocean and that fish coming out of the ocean, the fish jumping out of the ocean, and the fish landing back in the ocean, all of it becomes a part of one same song,
Exactly.
one same unified. So
The only hard part about that is, even with me with practicing love, because I didn't have a great foundation of it, because I had no real teacher to teach me love as a kid, because of trauma and stuff like that. So when I would try to force love and kindness, it was very aggravating. Like I remember going to a Vipassana retreat. For all the first 8 days, I was focusing on love and kindness. Like, I'm going to force love and kindness so I can cry. And it drove me insane. I remember just like I'm shaking my head and like twitching, like I need to cry, I need to cry, I need to cry. And it like drove me mad. It legit drove me mad. And then on the 8th day, I believe, or the ninth, where you start to practice what is it?
metta, right?
Metta, yeah.
Yeah, loving kindness.
And it's the same day where I was like, okay, F this, I'm done with practicing.
Up.
I gave up, and we started practicing metta, and then I started crying. The
That's
moment
right.
that
moment
you let
you
go,
gave up.
yes. And I mean, here's an interesting point, or another nice little topic to get into is vulnerability. Like what is vulnerability and surrender? I think people misunderstand that. What do you think? How important is it in your practice, surrender?
Oh my gosh. It's like, if I could go back in time, what would I tell myself, right? I don't know if I would give myself a lecture or a sermon or anything like that, because I don't think I would have listened. But if I could go back and tell that person a couple words, the first word would be love, right? Infinite or unconditional love. And the other would be surrender. So, because this is the thing, like, this identity, or this ego, or this collection of memories and experiences that a person has as they progress along the path, or as they go along this journey of discovery or enlightenment or whatever it is, that accumulation, that feeling that, oh, after so many years I'm entitled to this, after so many years of practice and seeing this teacher and seeing that teacher and blah blah blah, that is all complete, utter, illusory bullshit. And it is the very thing that is between consciousness and the unfolding of it into a non-dual state and enlightenment. It is the thorn, that self that is saying, I did this, I did that practice, blah blah blah. That's the very thing. And it's in, see, it's weird when I say surrender. There's two ways that this can be experienced, or like visceral surrender. When I say surrender, the first thing that comes to people's minds is that it's an act. It's a thing that they have to do.
Right.
Like, it's a dropping, right? Like, imagine you're carrying a bundle of sticks or something, and then you just drop it, and that's like surrendering. That's still a surrender that's based on activity. And I feel like the second way that surrender can be experienced is that when there's no longer activity, there's no longer a movement, there's no longer a dropping, there's no longer an action. It's actually purely just a state of, it's like all the energies that have gone into the ego and have gone into action and doing, all of those energies withdraw and, I guess, fold into themselves, and there's a state of being.
Right.
So, or non-being, whatever school you're from, right? So there's that. It's like you can sit in meditation and you can keep trying to do and do and do, or you could actually just drop it, let the mind be as it is. And that in itself, letting the mind be as it is, that compared to a state of activity, that is surrender.
Right. it's it's almost like the art of counting your blessings. You human beings, we do this thing where we are very logical, and we think by doing A plus B it will equal C, especially in spiritual practice. If I meditate 8 hours a day, I will eventually get my third eye open. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. You know, you're not. I know people that meditate for 40 years, 20 years. Where are they now? They're still suffering.
Right.
They're still not at the place they want it because they're projecting this image of what meditation is, of what they are supposed to be. Everything they're projecting this view of their practice.
And the crazy part is that is all in your mind.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
completely in your head.
So, and it sucks because it is the mind still playing with itself, and you've been practicing for 20 years, 40 years, and it's still playing that game. It is painful. But in surrender, like you were saying, it's non-activity. I think for the beginners of meditation or the people that have done it for a little bit, I think it's important to stress the surrender is knowing that when these thoughts come up, when these feelings come up, you have to be able to understand that when you have reaction to these things, that's even fine.
Sure.
I think that people think that you need to empty. Okay, this is the thing. You need to empty out your mind. You need to quiet the mind. You don't need to do jack shit. You don't. What you need to do in the beginning is to see how, just observe
right.
the reactions, the actions, whatever it is, with acceptance, surrender. Don't hold back. Don't try to push away. Don't try to invoke. That's all that. All these activities those are still activities.
Yeah,
it's legit. You're
still
not
doing.
Yeah, acceptance is non-doing. It's really non-doing, and that's why it's important to stress the loving part too with surrender. You surrender in a loving state, because if it does encompass this type of energy to the acceptance, you know.
Yeah, I think with the statement you just made about like people they have this pressure when they start meditating about like having to quiet their mind or having to still their mind or having to empty their thoughts. First of all, like that's a concept to people that haven't experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so your expectation of what that is supposed to be is completely different than the reality of it. And the way for it to actually arise is the truth is that your mind, although there are thoughts arising in it, its nature is empty. So the mind is already empty, the mind is already still. It's just that there's a cloud of activity that is what the practitioner's focus is perceiving. But the empty nature, the luminous nature, the still nature that's inherent in the mind, that is yet to be discovered, but it's already there. And it's not something that manifests through intense effort,
right,
through pressure. It manifests through surrender. You're like, oh wow, it's like I had this thing in my pocket the whole time. Like the presence was always there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It was always there. That thing. It's such an ironic thing. That's why many traditions are very paradoxical when it comes to these things. Like, for example, Wu Wei, action and inaction. Like there is an action, which is meditation or self contemplation, but you do it without action.
Yeah,
it's such a weird paradigm that happens. You know, I don't. It's see even that's non-dual. You know, I think a lot of these concepts are actually very non-dual. But you know what happens? You know what happens?
What happens?
We project. Everything's a concept. Everything's an idea.
Sure.
Everything is what we make it. We have ideas about people. We have ideas about ourselves.
I think I heard you say this on the phone recently. You said that the very pursuit of peace is what keeps you from it.
So yeah, so the pursuit of happiness is causing you to be unhappy because we're chasing this projection of what happiness looks like for me, or we have this projection of a memory of what happiness used to look like within us, but we don't accept where we are right now. And it's sad. It's and I but I understand.
Right.
I understand the suffering behind it. But by accepting the place where you're at, it does bring about this contentment, this happiness to it. But don't get me wrong, people have struggle. I'm not negating the fact that people do have struggles. People suffer. People have anger and depression. And it takes practice to even get to that point of how do I how do I not project? How do I not
Live in the illusions
of my
that the
own
mind
mind?
is creating. Well, all this non-dual talk is leading me to the Gita. So I'm gonna open up a random page and read a quote, and let's see what our thoughts are on it. Okay.
What do we get, Ryan? What do we get?
Let's see.
Did you get anything good? Did we have expectations for this?
I think I did. I think I did.
Did we have a projection of we were about to flip to a good page, but we
Yeah,
didn't get a good page?
that's exactly what happened. Okay. Okay, here it is. Here it is. All right. Oh, I just left. Hold on. Okay. Oh, perfect. I read this one to you before, and this is practical. This is not this is not one of those out there quotes. Each one achieves success by focusing on his own action. This is Krishna. Hear how one finds success by focusing on his own action. By his own action, man finds success, worshiping the source of all creatures' activity, the presence pervading all that is. Better to do one's own duty imperfectly than to do another man's well. Doing action intrinsic to his being, a man avoids guilt. That last part is powerful. What do you think?
There's a couple things to it. One is um, when you do your own work, even if you fail, there's a learning aspect to it. There's all these blessings to doing these works, even if you fail. But we feel better if someone is more successful or someone is. We just feel better even helping other people. It's like, oh, I'll help you. Like you seem like you're struggling. But can we do that for ourselves? Can it's the same concept. We don't want to do what we do upon for other people.
Wow.
So that's one thing about that quote.
What do you think that is?
Why is it? Because we get a boost of endorphins. We do. I honestly feel you do feel good when you help people. Right. Everyone does. You feel good. You're like, oh, I did something good today. And that's not a bad thing. But there needs to be a balance of don't forget yourself. I think the mind starts to play and starts to self-identify with I'm a good person by doing these things.
Sure.
So you go into this cycle. But then it's actually you trying to mitigate your own sufferings.
I think my take on that quote and on what you said was that if you're doing another man's duty, you never really have to take 100% accountability for failing.
Oh, that's another, yeah.
You never have
True.
to really 100% take responsibility. Like if you're working at a place and you don't want to be there and you don't feel like the company or the project belongs to you in any way, when you fail or when things don't work out, it's not a big deal.
Mm,
But if it's your enterprise and it's your project and it's your temple and it fails, then it's serious.
right.
And
And
I
then,
think some people want to avoid that.
well, that's why you project onto other people after that. Like we get stressed out, so we're like, oh, why did you do this? You messed this up for me, not me. Oh, I accept for what it
We don't
is.
want to take the blunt.
The blame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I know I have a friend who told me this not that long ago. He told me a story about how he used to work at TJ Maxx when he was younger, and he was like 100% a hard worker, absolutely like on top of his stuff. Until one day, one of his coworkers came up to him and said, "Hey man, why do you work so hard? You know they don't even care about you." And he thought about it. It's like, oh, you're right. I didn't even think about that. And ever since then, he told me, "Yeah, I like to take the easy way out because it's like one, I don't like to work that hard anymore. I don't. Dude, a lot of these people don't care about me. You know, like I don't want to take the blame supposedly. I don't want to take
The burden, the
yeah
weight.
yeah because it's not my company. So, and then the last part was what was the last part of that quote? The
By doing your own duty, you avoid guilt.
oh, okay, yeah. So same thing. It's there's so many times where we can project our blame to other people and relieve our stresses and do those things, and we don't ever be we don't accept our accountability. Like we're not accountable, and that's something that we're becoming to do. You that's part of being an adult here as a human is learning to be accountable for yourself and your actions. That's part of sila. That's part of your morals and foundation of that. It's being virtuous. I remember one incident with my fire crew was we were doing maintenance on our tools and someone messed up on the painting part because there's like little we have this thing that looks like an axe and we paint a little strip on we to differentiate which one's the fire tools, so fire tool ready and which one's project work. So these are two different activities we do as wildland firefighters. So some guy messed up on the painting portion of this, and our captain came up and said, "So who did this?" No one answered.
Oh.
And he asked again, "Who did this?" No one answered. So in that moment, I'm thinking, "Great, we're gonna have to run like 12 miles right now. We're gonna have to hike. We're gonna get in trouble." Like seriously, as a fire crew, it's even more important because we need to take accountability for each other because
For the
we don't
team.
for the team. We fight fire. It's hazardous. We don't want someone like that. So luckily, he didn't punish us, surprisingly. But later on that night, we all got together as a crew. The captains weren't there, just the crew members, and we had a long discussion on, hey, whoever did it, just own up right now. Just own up. Just do it. Like even though it makes us look bad what you did, just do it right now. Why? It's just part of growing. Like it's okay to fail. This is the problem. People don't want to fail. Again, this and it goes back to being happy. By not failing, I feel happy. When it should be, if I fail, I learn and grow, and I am happy with that.
It's more like if I don't fail, I'm comfortable, and I think people
Right.
conflate comfortability with happiness.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. No, and so after that, no one accepted the burden.
Wow.
No one said, no one took accountability. So that sucked. It goes back to the quote. It's no one, no one took the blame. He felt great. Whoever did it, he felt great by not saying anything. But also, he was probably afraid.
He probably felt guilty.
Probably did feel guilty, but his mind played a
Probably
trick on
felt
him.
great and guilty at the same time.
Right.
If that happens,
He's
it's
like,
like, oh,
"Ooh."
I got out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. But later he's probably like, man, that was a lame move.
Right. And it hurts you. I feel that we just intuitively know what to do in life. We know, but we are our own disasters. We mess up because we overthink things. We cheat. We try to do all these things that it's just self harming. But deep down, you do know. Like
Yeah.
when you were telling earlier about your experience when you were younger and what you would tell yourself, just feel like you already knew. You really did know what you what adult Ryan would have told teenage Ryan. Like even going back when I reflect back, I know what I needed to do back then. I intuitively knew. It just wasn't like there wasn't like anyone to poke me to do
Yeah,
that.
right. It's like you knew that that was the leap to make, but just step back, just walk back from the edge of the cliff. Like, no, not ready for that.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
well, I think we could end things here. Any final thoughts? This was a fantastic episode, by the way, and we're gonna have more talks from Ricardo and I. This will go up on my YouTube channel, and we'll give both of our websites in the link to the video.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have my website up soon and social media stuff. I'm still working on that, but we'll get it soon. It'll be up on the YouTube channels and all that other stuff. So this was an awesome interview. It was an awesome discussion.
Next episode we'll do Bodhidharma.
We'll do Bodhidharma.
All right,
next
fantastic.
episode.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
All right, bye guys.